Hydrogen chloride molecules are polar. When HCl molecules in the gas phase are cooled, the kinetic energy of the molecules can no longer overcome the dipole-dipole forces between them. The opposite ends of the molecules attract each other and coalesce to form a liquid.
Dipole-dipole is the second intermolecular force we're looking at. And like we said earlier, dipole means that something is polar. So in the dipole-dipole force, you have something polar interacting with another species, which is polar. Now, a lot of times this is just the same molecule condensed from a gas phase to a liquid phase, or a gas phase to solid phase, whatever. Hydrogen chloride up there in that little video, you can see what's happening. Now, HCl by default is a gas. But if you cool it down enough, it will begin to liquefy. And what happens is, as you cool something down, you're essentially removing the kinetic energy of the HCl molecule, so they don't move around as much. And when they don't move around as much, these intermolecular forces start to form, because H is slightly positive and Cl is slightly negative, and there begins to form intermolecular forces, those dotted lines between the opposite sides of the molecule. And eventually more intermolecular forces form, they begin to coalesce, and all of a sudden you have a liquid. Now, dipole-dipole is a pretty strong force as well. It's not as strong as ion dipole, but it is pretty strong. So in the lower right-hand corner there, we've got a couple of compounds, and the top two have about the same molar mass as well as the bottom ones. Now, molar mass is part of boiling, all right? The more mass you have, the more energy it takes to get it into the boiling point. But notice there how carbon monoxide has a slightly higher boiling point than nitrogen. 4 degrees higher is what CO is, minus 192 versus minus 196. And you might be thinking, whatever, Russell, that's really exciting. Well, here's why it is exciting. Because nitrogen, N2, is completely non-polar. There's no polar interactions whatsoever. But CO has oxygen, which is more electronegative, and it's going to be the negative side. And carbon, which is less electronegative, that's going to be the positive side. So it does have a dipole. It's polar, all right? So the CO, one carbon will start being interested in an oxygen, and the oxygen will start being interested in a carbon. You're going to have to break those intermolecular forces to make a liquid into a gas. And that's why it takes 4 degrees Celsius more of energy to make CO become a gas than N2. N2 doesn't have that positive-negative attraction to it. So things that are polar have higher boiling points than things that are nonpolar. The next example with bromine and ICl is even better. Now those two compounds, again, almost the same molar mass, not exactly, but pretty close. But notice the ICl, which is polar, much higher boiling point than bromine, which is completely nonpolar. It takes almost 40 degrees more to make ICl boil than it does Br2. Their molar masses are about the same, so that's not a factor. But this polarity is enough to make things just a little bit higher. If you wanted to know what the strongest intermolecular force in acetone is, what you would do is you'd look at the structure of acetone. So acetone is a CH3 followed by a CO followed by a CH3. And this might be a good time to review your Lewis structure information. See if you can remember how to do Lewis structures. Acetone has a carbon with 3 hydrogens on it. That's what the little structure is trying to say. And then there's another carbon that's going to have a double bond on it, and the oxygen will have 2 lone pairs. And then finally there's another CH3 group on the end right there. So this is a very cheesy version of how to draw acetone. The important part for us here is that acetone is polar. That carbon-oxygen in the middle doesn't have a corresponding like carbon-oxygen on the other side. There's actually 2 CH3s. That's going to be a trigonal planar electron pair geometry, and everything around that carbon is not the same, so it's polar. So this molecule is polar. That carbon-oxygen double bond bond is different than the carbons on the CH3 groups. That carbon in the middle is trigonal planar, so not everything around the carbon is the same. It's polar, and polar means dipole-dipole for an intermolecular force. There's no ions, like there's no Na plus and Cl minuses, so it's not ion dipole. You'd have to have something polar, which we have, but also something ionic, and we don't have anything ionic. And we haven't talked about C, D, and E, so don't worry about those yet, but let's start talking about them right now. The third type of intermolecular force we're going to talk about in this section is the hydrogen bonding force. And this is like dipole-dipole on steroids. It's a super powerful polar-polar interaction. And it only happens if you have a hydrogen connected to oxygen, fluorine, or nitrogen. All right? If that hydrogen's connected to carbon, you don't have this. If the hydrogen's connected to chlorine, you don't have it. But oh wow, if you have H connected to O, F, or N, you're going to have the hydrogen bonding force, and it's really, really strong. So on the right-hand side there are some examples of hydrogen bonding. Water has an OH. That means that water experiences the hydrogen bonding force. It's polar, but it's not just polar, it's like superpolar. And superpolar in my world means the hydrogen bonding force, or H bonding. Ammonia is in the second example there, NH3, and ammonia is also has NH bonds, so it has hydrogen bonding. It's very, very strong. HF, hydrofluoric acid, has hydrogen bonding in it. There are many examples of these hydrogen bonded species, but if you want the extra power of the hydrogen bonding force, you must have a hydrogen connected to O, F, or N. Hydrogen connected to anything else does not give you the hydrogen bonding force. So the question is here, which of the following should exhibit hydrogen bonding? Well, I just said earlier that hydrofluoric acid, which is answer A, is going to do it. But let's talk about this just a little bit more. To have hydrogen bonding, you have to have H connected to O, F, or N. So definitely answer A would be right because H is connected to F. But let's keep going here. All right, maybe there's another one in there. Now, C2H4 is a compound called ethylene or ethene. Carbon is connected to hydrogen, but carbon is not O, F, or N, so that's not going to work. So answer B does not have any hydrogen bonding. Now, C, it might be tempting to say, oh yeah, that's got hydrogen bonding. The H is connected to the O. But a lot of times in chemistry, a CH3 is a methyl group. And if you remember from the Lewis structures, methyl is a carbon with 3 hydrogens and one more spot to put something in. Carbon likes to have 4 bonds, all right? So those hydrogens are not connected to the oxygen at all. They're connected to carbon. And it's actually the carbon which is connected to oxygen. The oxygen is connected to the other carbon, which has 3 H's on it. So there are no OH bonds in CH3OCH3. That's called an ether. And it looks like at first like it might have it, but if you draw the Lewis structure out, you'll see that the oxygen is not connected to hydrogen, no hydrogen bonds. If you look at D, though, you have that CH3, that methyl group. That's carbon with 3 hydrogens, so there's no HO bonds there. But there's an OH on the end, and that oxygen is definitely connected to the hydrogen. So for this particular problem, both A and D have hydrogen bonds. Both A and D have hydrogen connected to O, F, or N. Good to go.
Ice is held together as a solid by hydrogen bonds. When ice melts to liquid water, the regular, relatively open structure of ice collapses. Liquid water can be more efficiently packed and denser than ice.
The next time you put an ice cube in a drink to make it cold, you should appreciate how neat it is that the ice cube actually floats on the drink you're putting it in. And why I think that's so cool is that it's very, very rare for a solid phase to float on a liquid phase. Most of the time, if you, for example, put solid iron in liquid iron, the solid goes to the bottom. Solids are usually more dense than the liquids. But because of the hydrogen network involved in solid ice, which is solid water, there actually creates a lot of space. And when the solid is melted into the liquid water actually comes together more than the solid does. So water is amazing for so many ways, but one of the ways it's amazing is that the solid phase is less dense than the liquid phase. So the solid floats on the liquid. And again, that's very, very rare for that to happen, but it's a result of the hydrogen bonds. So in the graph right there, you see how water kind of there's a break between where the liquid density is and where the ice density. And remember that water, it freezes at 0 Celsius. That's where the break is, all right? Most compounds have a solid that's more dense than the liquid, but here, if you look at those numbers, the liquid is more dense than the solid, and that's kind of a neat thing about water.
A plot of the boiling points of the group 6A hydrogen compounds shows a trend. Based on this trend, we would expect the boiling point of water to be here. In reality, H2O's boiling point is much higher. This is a consequence of water's stronger hydrogen bonds.
This is another cool feat about water, which is so much different than a lot of the other compounds. Now, in that graph in the lower left, it talks about other dihydrogen chalcogen compounds. Chalcogens are group 6A. So we have their tellurium, selenium, sulfur, and they're all -2. So they have 2 hydrogens with them. And earlier I said how molar mass plays a factor, and molar mass does play a factor in the boiling points, which is what we're looking at in this graph. So water is, of course, oxygen is a smaller molar mass than sulfur and selenium. So if you look at this graph, you would expect like water's boiling point to be maybe right there, like -100. But as you probably know, water boils more like 100 degrees, positive 100 degrees Celsius. So 200 degrees higher than what you would expect based on just the molar mass of these things. And this is the result of hydrogen bonds. Those hydrogen bonds hold on to each other. The water molecules hold on to each other much tighter than an H2S, H2SE, or even H2TE. So it's just amazing. So this difference in the boiling points is directly attributable to hydrogen bonds. Now, in the right-hand side there, I'm showing other families involved. Right under water is HF, hydrofluoric acid. It has a higher boiling point than HCl, HBr, and HI, which you can see down there. And yes, that's from hydrogen bonds. Ammonia is below that. That has a nitrogen-hydrogen bond. It's stronger than pH3, ASH3, and pH3, stuff like SPH3. So again, hydrogen bonds really are working out. But in the lower part, you're seeing the group 4A different metals and nonmetals. And they also will have 4 hydrogens around them. CH4 does not have a hydrogen connected to NO or F. So CH4 is in the predicted kind of molar mass pattern. It's lower by far. It follows the pattern of other group 4 metals. So tin is highest, germanium would be next, silicon next, and carbon would be right after that. So hydrogen bonding, pretty important. And of course, water is really important to life. So water and hydrogen bonding are cool. Anyway, I say that because we're alive. Anyway, I get excited by these things.
DNA is composed of 2 sugar phosphate chains that are oriented in opposite directions. This orientation permits complementary base pairs to be connected by hydrogen bonds. Hydrogen bonds are responsible for the helical shape of the molecule.
DNA is, of course, the backbone of all living systems, and DNA is connected through hydrogen bonds. It keeps that helix together. Amazing stuff. In 2013, they were actually able to take a picture of hydrogen bonds, and if you look really carefully in this picture, the more bright white lines, those are intermolecular, so carbon-carbon bond, stuff like that. But if you look really carefully, like right there, there's kind of a dull gray line. That's a hydrogen bond, and people were able to actually take a picture of it, which I was just amazed. But anyway, it's really cool. It shows that science can be really neat. Hydrogen bonds are pretty important. So yeah, so all right, hydrogen bonds are cool.